Hello everyone, my name is Reto.
And I'm Ian Lewis. Today on the App Clinic, we'll be reviewing the App Clinic.
We're turning the microscope on ourselves and taking a look at what we do, why we do it, and where we're hoping to take this runaway freight train of app awesomeness.
We'll also be giving a shout out to some of our favorite apps and mourning the absence of the giant fake phone. This is the App Clinic.
Each week on the App Clinic, Ian and I review a series of apps in a particular category.
Lately, we've been digging a little deeper, highlighting some of the technical challenges involved for people trying to build apps that fit into that category.
And at the end of each episode, we offer our patients a set of prescriptions that we believe will help them take their app to the next level.
Then the following Tuesday, in this sort of circle of awesomeness we have going, Roman, Nick, and Adam take another pass from a design perspective. They'll offer some insights into how to make the apps more consistent with the design aesthetic of Android and even create some screen mocks for apps that offer some practical ideas for how to make your apps more intuitive.
The idea behind both shows is to take the conversations we on the Android Developer Relations team have every day and hold them in more of a public forum.
And with less swear words. Our team's mission is to help developers create magical experiences. We want to make Android a better platform for users and, of course, make a better platform for our developers, make it more successful.
And to that end, we'll be shifting our focus to be a little more technical. We'll be looking not just at the features that the apps that we look at implement, but also how they're implemented.
We're not just going to look at features either. We're going to be looking at things like efficiency and how to make your UI buttery smooth, and best practices in general that exist for apps in whatever category we happen to be reviewing.
Each episode is going to have a strong technical focus. There'll be plenty of code snippets that are going to show you how to do the things that we've been talking about all episode.
We also wanted a way to reward the app developers, the ones we love, like
Absolutely.
Tasks, Hipmunk, IM, and Camera FX Pro. These guys followed our advice, they implemented the improvements that we talked about, and they took their apps to the next level.
And so to that end, we're creating the App Clinic's Pure Android Collection. So this is going to be a collection of apps that Ian and I are going to handpick, and each of which we believe offers the users a magical experience in some way.
Now, any of the apps that we review on the App Clinic will be eligible for consideration to include in this collection. So, I think the big question is, how do you get your app nominated?
It is indeed. So if you have any questions about the details that we're discussing here, let us know on the G Plus event or on YouTube or however you're watching the event now, and we'll try and get back to them at the end of the show.
That's right. Engineer Dan is busy checking out the old... That wasn't supposed to happen. Okay.
That's all right. Switch that to the background if you would, Daniel.
There you go. Okay.
So why don't I jump back and then jump forward?
Indeed.
Perfect. Well, not quite as perfect. That's not quite the right one. Daniel? No? There isn't one for us behind? Interesting.
Let me look.
All right.
Yeah.
Woohoo! All right.
There you
Okay.
go.
Now play that thing, and it's going to be awesome.
All right. Boom. So how do you
Yeah!
get your app nominated?
Excellent.
Sorry, guys.
It's
That's
okay.
all good. So we've created a Trello board on which we take nominations for both the categories you'd like us to review, and you can log in with your Google account, so it's pretty straightforward, and then anyone can add a comment to the nominations card on the proposed categories list.
Now, just in case you didn't see that URL as it was flying by, the URL is bit.ly/appclinictrello.
That's
Capital A, capital C, capital T. So, we're going to go through and create new cards for each nomination. You can vote for them, and once a new category has got sufficient votes that we can make an interesting show out of it, we're going to create a new list. And
Exactly, and so then for each list, so what you're going to end up with is one list which is all categories which you vote on and add your comments for the categories you'd like, and then we're going to go through and create a new list for each of those categories, and that's where we're looking for nominations for apps. So the top card on each of those category lists is going to be a place where you can comment and say, hey, please nominate my app.
all right, so we can just see over here
Let me get out of the
would
way,
be
sorry.
the, all right, so this is where you're going to nominate categories that you want to talk about.
That's right.
And then once we've got a category that everybody wants to talk about, like Halloween apps, our most successful category ever,
Absolutely.
then you put cards in there. And it works a lot more like, it works a lot like Moderator, except there's no downvotes, and you can see a lot more on one screen.
Exactly. And so this gives us a chance to see, what are the categories that people really want us to look at, and gives you a chance to see ahead of time what's coming. So rather than just having to keep track of what's happening next week, you can see that, hey, we're doing social apps as well in a few weeks' time. So I want to make sure that my social app gets nominated, and then you can, help get people to vote them up, and so on and so forth. So we're going to create the cards. At the moment, you guys can only create comments and votes. And then a week before each app clinic, we're going to hand select 3 or 4 of the apps that we want to take a look at.
Now we'll generally try and select the apps with the highest number of votes, but we want to increase the chance that the apps that we look at will make it into our pure Android collection. So we are going to do a little bit of editorial work. We're going to look favorably on apps that are self-nominated, as well as those that pass some of our most basic tests. Now, I'm actually going to break in here and say that based on some of the feedback we've gotten from our partners, we will probably move to an entirely self-nominated system. So you will need to make sure that the app developer is involved with the app that you're nominating if you're not the developer yourself.
That's right. And the reason why we want to do that is, well, for 2 reasons. And mainly it's because we want to work with developers who are really interested in hearing our feedback. We're going to be pretty candid. I think anyone who's watched the show before knows that. It's always, hopefully, constructive criticism, but we want to make sure that if we're putting this advice out there, that the people who we're giving it to want to hear it and want to be able to take advantage of what we're telling them. So speaking of tests, let's talk about how you go from an App Clinic patient to a pure Android member.
So we'll start by putting each app through our basic QA checklist, which you may recognize as the recently finished Android Core App Quality Guidelines. Now this is the low bar. It basically just demonstrates that your app runs and doesn't crash and follows the most basic set of quality guidelines we can think of.
Absolutely. We'd like to think that you've already run your apps through this checklist before you publish it on Google Play, let alone submit it to us to have a look at. So we might use this as a way to filter out some of the apps which aren't quite ready for us to review yet.
Right. Now, after we do the basic checklist, we're going to look at how your app runs on tablet devices. You know that this is the year of the Android tablet.
Absolutely.
Not to be confused with 10 years from now, which is the year of the Linux desktop.
That's right. I've been waiting for that for so long.
Right. Now we're gonna use the tablet app quality guidelines as a guide there.
And it's important that your app not only work, but it works well on all devices. So that means phones and tablets. So we'll be giving it a good going over on a phone, on a 7-inch and a 10-inch tablet, before we consider it for part of the pure Android collection.
Are we going to do 12-inch, 15-inch tablets?
We may do, yeah.
Sure.
We'll play it by ear.
All right. Now the last deal breaker is going to be your feature graphic. Every app in a category needs to have a feature graphic in order to be included.
And that's not just us being difficult, it's actually a technical requirement. So if you're nominating your app for review and you want it to be considered for entry to the pure Android collection, you need to have a feature graphic.
In fact, we're actually going to take a look at all of your assets, feature graphics, icons, and even your app descriptions.
Yeah, and then Nick and Roman and Adam we'll go through each of the apps through the prism of the Android Design Guide on Tuesday's Android Design in Action, offering some suggestions for how to improve your user experience of each of the apps from a design perspective, as well as the category in general and the usual user experience tips that these guys are happy to provide.
Now remember, we're not expecting every app that we look at to be perfect from the first time we see it.
No, and the point of the App Clinic isn't to find the very best, most popular app in each category. There are other featured lists that do exactly that. We're developer advocates, so what makes it a good day for us is when we find a way to help a developer take their good app and make it a better app.
So don't worry if we review your app and give you a bunch of constructive criticism. The very fact that we reviewed your app means that it has some interesting functionality that we think needs to be represented on Google Play. Giving you constructive criticism gives you an opportunity to take that great functionality and turn it into a wonderful app.
Absolutely. What we're really hoping to create is a knowledge base of information that helps not just the apps that we review, but everyone who watches and all the other Android app developers to create really magical experiences for their users.
Which is awesome because you are a magician and you will be showing us how to make things magic.
Exactly. And I may get into a little bit of trouble from the Magicians Trade Union for giving away some of the secrets, but ultimately I think it's worth it.
You know what? What's really magic? I can wave my hands and make the office turn green.
Oh, No, I can.
No. Oh yeah, you can. Okay, whatever. Wow, the one time we do want the lights to screw up.
I can't make it go weird.
Darn. Oh well. Good job, Dan.
Yeah,
Engineer
thanks,
Dan. Okay, so what we're really trying to do is we want to hear back from you. We want to hear back from the developers whose apps we're reviewing, and we want to hear back throughout the entire cycle of going through and applying the ideas we've had, rejecting some, accepting others, going through technical challenges. That entire process of improving the apps, we'd really like to work with you closely and hopefully record that process.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of what we're doing here, it's really easy for us to stand here, flick through your app and tell you what you should be doing differently, but we're really interested to hear what happens when you try and take that advice. And it's a case of, hey, we thought about that and we chose not to do it for a reason. Or we took your advice, we tried to do it and we ran into these roadblocks. That's really important and useful information. So we're going to continue to regularly broadcast Developer Strike Back, and that's your opportunity for the developers whose apps that we've reviewed to respond to us.
Now, rather than following up the week after the App Clinic, we're asking you to let us know when you've got something you'd like to share.
And we're really looking forward to hearing some real war stories around the implementation suggestions or the implementation of the suggestions that we've given you. So both tales of success, like, yeah, we tried to do this thing and now our list views are buttery smooth, or frustration, like, yeah, we tried to implement this skeuomorphic design alternative and it really didn't work out, and our users, our A/B testing and our beta releases just showed that it wasn't working. So we want to hear both ends. What are we getting right? What are we getting wrong? What are you finding easy? What are you finding difficult? So we can then feed that back into our system as well, and try and come up with ways to make the things that we think are good easier for you guys to do. So that is hopefully going to save other developers pain as they try and improve their apps.
Now, once you've been reviewed, let us know whenever you think you're one step closer to pure Android, and we'll take another look. If we notice something that's particularly cool or particularly challenging, we'll invite you to Developer Strike Back to talk about what you've done.
And then once your app is pure Android magic, we'll induct you into the Pure Android collection, which will hopefully offer you some extra downloads, but more importantly, will give you an opportunity to brag to your friends.
Of course. And we're really looking forward to the new format, and we hope that it helps provide some recognition and motivation and hopefully some income to the developers who are brave enough to offer up your apps for public scrutiny. So with that, I think we're going to open it up to questions from the internet.
Yeah, so is there, do you know, Dan, is there any questions from any of the people who may have tuned in to let us know what they need to do?
No, but we do have one comment. It says, you guys are incredibly lucky to be employed the way you are, and your job is basically just criticize someone else's work, and they do all the work. So good for you guys.
There is an aspect to that. I won't lie. But I mean, in truth, it's not really about the criticism. What we're really trying to do is find out more ways to be able to help you guys to build great apps. And we're really trying to make it easier for developers to build the sorts of apps that we want to use and that people want to use.
Yeah, you got to remember that this is only a small part of our jobs. Most of the time, what we're doing is writing all of the documentation on developer.android.com, creating the tutorials, writing sample code, and writing things like the app compatibility library.
Absolutely.
So if there are specific technical issues or problems with the operating system or with the framework that are preventing you from creating a great app, it's our job to help you surmount those obstacles. And whether that's by creating a compatibility library, by writing a better tutorial, by documenting things differently, or by going in and fixing issues with the operating system itself, that's our job. So we want to hear from you so that we can do our job better.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a key part of what we do. It's like, we do stand here, and in this show in particular, it's all about trying to help developers build something better, and in doing so, criticizing those who haven't done the best that they can do. But really, the reverse part of our job is taking all of that feedback from you guys, and that's why we really mean it when you say, we tried to do what you said and we couldn't for whatever reason. We want to hear that, not just because it changes the message that we can tell other people, but so that we can go back to the framework team, so that we can go back to our sample code, to the support library, to the developer tools, and figure out ways to really make that process easier for you guys. So we take that notion of, like at Google, a lot of companies would call the role that we have tech evangelists. And at Google, we call ourselves advocates, and the reason for that is because we really care about having that reverse lens. We want to be able to take the suggestions and the experiences that you guys have and feed it back into the system to try and improve that.
Yeah, I mean, we sit right in the middle of the framework team. On one side, we've got the video and media guys and graphics, and then we've got all the the windowing and support and USB and just basically in a horseshoe around us.
Yeah.
And you will often find us going around to those people to either ask what it is they intend. So, I'll say, Diane Hackborn, for instance. There's this perfectly legitimate request that I just got from a developer, and I really think that we can't satisfy it correctly. And then, because Diane is smarter than me, she'll usually say, well, actually, they've sort of approached it wrong. Here's the way the system is supposed to work, and here's a way that makes more sense. Or one of the video guys will be like, wow, we don't have that feature right now, so here's what you're gonna have to do to work around it, or here's when we think we're gonna have it, can you collect some more information, can you find more partners that need this? We have these interactions all the time. So yes, our job is incredibly awesome.
Yes, there's no debate about that aspect.
And yes, we do criticize lots and lots of things all the time, which I think if you've ever worked in or near a developer relations team, you will know is pretty much par for the course.
Yeah.
But
if you like to complain, it's a pretty good career path to take.
The criticism isn't part of our job. It's usually what we just do over beers on Friday night. The real task that's before us, and the most difficult and complicated but satisfying thing that we need to do, is to make this a better platform for developers.
Absolutely.
And part of that is making it a better platform, and part of that is making sure that you as developers know how good the platform is already.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's what has driven a lot of what we're doing on the App Clinic, is a frustration of saying, look, here's an app that is really, really good, but it's not as successful as it could be, and some of the reasons for that is that the developer just may not know what they could be taking advantage of. And so that's really what we're talking about with the new direction for the App Clinic, is to try and drive it more and more into that technical realm, so that we're not really going to be that focused on a feature by feature breakdown and comparison between the apps. We're really looking at, okay, so for all of the apps in the category, here are the key things that you need to know. And for these specific apps, here are a bunch of new things that you could do to make this app even more compelling, to increase engagement, increase downloads, and hopefully lead to increased monetization, however you choose to monetize your apps.
The other thing that we really need to bring up is what motivates us to change the show in this way. And it's because it is very easy for us to point out, oh, look, there's the menu button of shame. Here's an action bar that doesn't work the way you think. Yeah. I mean, that stuff is incredibly trivial. But we realized that most of the problems that people are having, if they are truly interested in making great Android apps, don't have anything to do with that. They've already read the design guidelines. They've already sort of decided what they're going to follow and what they're going to change. But they may be doing something like we brought up last week, where you're requiring the user to type in a long username and password in order to even use the app, which, as we know, reduces engagement. So we want to make sure that we're showing the best practices for things like that, and also trying to solve common problems that affect many different applications.
Exactly. And I think another important part of what we're trying to do, particularly with this show, but I think across developer relations, the Android platform iterates pretty frequently. So there's a lot of new features that come out at a rate of, it seems like at least every 6 months these days. And so we know that obviously it's our job to know what all of those things are, and so we keep track of that. It always seems like, wow, all of this stuff is so obvious, we've seen it for so long, why isn't everyone doing it? Unsurprisingly, not every developer spends every minute of their day hitting F5, refreshing their developer.android.com site to find out what new APIs are
Although
available.
some of you do, and we know who you are.
And thank you. Those page views are paying our bills.
Exactly.
So a big part of this is for apps like one of the apps that we looked at just last week, Grocery IQ. Great app, wonderful design, a lot of thought and effort went into it, but I think the developers of that app just haven't necessarily been able to keep track of all of the fancy new features that are available, which can make that app even more compelling, even more exciting. And so a big part, I think, of what we're going to be telling our developers and our audience is some of the cool new functions, the new features, the new APIs that you can use to help improve your apps and make them even better for all the newest Android device owners. And they're kind of a particularly important audience. They may not be the biggest number, but they are people who tend to drive engagement, and more importantly, the ones which tend to set trends amongst their friends. So if you get those early adopters and get them to love your app, they're the ones who are going to tell their friends, their family about this cool new app that they should be using. So there's an opportunity there, and hopefully that's something that we can help you guys drive towards.
Exactly. The other thing to keep in mind is that last year when we started talking about action bars and buttons of shame, it was all sort of new. And if you were approaching your app from a market share position, looking at devices and OS versions, and trying to hit the largest sweet spot, it probably wasn't a particularly compelling story. That has pretty much changed. The tide has turned, and we're now going from the old gingerbread world, which was heavily focused on varying UI patterns, per device UI, per manufacturer UI, lots of different buttons, lots of different assets that you either had to use or ignore at your peril. Now we're in the ICS and Jelly Bean world, where things are considerably better designed from the OS standpoint. There are design patterns that affect every device on the market, and the OS itself has gotten significantly faster. So any poorly performing application or poorly designed application sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, and that's something you never want to stick out for the wrong reasons. You want to be an app which sticks out for being the shiniest, the fanciest, the newest, not the one which looks like it was designed several years ago. And so that's a big part, particularly of what the Android Design and Action team are going to be looking at on Tuesdays, is really trying to figure out ways that apps, particularly apps which have a unique look and feel, can maintain that uniqueness while still being consistent with the platform overall. And I think that's a really important part of what we're all trying to focus on. Is we don't want to create homogeneity across all apps. We don't want everything to look the same and act the same, but we do want to make it easy for users to understand how to explore the features, how to get started. So hopefully what we'll end up with in this collection, what we really envisage, is something that we can point to say, hey, if you want to build something awesome on Android that users are going to love, that fits into the platform while still having its own uniqueness and rich features, check out these apps. And so that's really the guiding principle behind the apps that we're going to choose. Not necessarily the one which has the most downloads, but the one which we think sort of highlights what's possible on Android, so that users and developers alike have something to aim for in terms of what they should be aspiring towards.
Now that's a very long answer to a comment that wasn't actually a question.
Very true.
But
it could have been a dig, but we'll take a dig and turn it into a 15-minute answer.
Right. Yeah, and next week we're going to answer all our YouTube comments from last week. I'm kidding.
Did we get any other questions, or any actual questions or comments which we can similarly comment on?
On G Plus or on YouTube?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of thank yous in the comments from YouTube today. Just for having these live shows every week. People really appreciate the fact that they can interact with you guys for even a short amount of time, and they know that you're actually really busy. And that dig earlier about not really doing anything but criticizing other people's work, is just a one-off comment.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it would be pretty ironic if we did spend any amount of time criticizing other apps and weren't able to take criticism ourselves. So we definitely want to hear that feedback. Things like, a good example, we heard a lot of people talking about the fact that they really loved the action bar and they wanted to use a pattern like that in their app. But that it was non-trivial to implement. And if we're going to complain about people not doing it the right way, shouldn't we make it easier? And so that's the sort of thing which leads back into teams within our team, in fact, going around and trying to build some of those things, put them in the support library for you guys to use.
Right. Although oddly enough, in this weird coincidence, yesterday we got 2 separate emails asking why did the menu go away in API level 10 or 11?
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think a lot of the times what we see is this clash almost, where we have an internal team deciding that this is the way that the platform is going to go, and external developers going, well, actually, I kind of disagree. And sometimes it can go both ways. We saw with the dashboard pattern was something which we were promoting back in the gingerbread days. It didn't really work, particularly once you put it onto a tablet. It's like, well, actually, this isn't so great. So that back and forth is a big part of what ends up driving future directions for things like Android design.
Well, and you'll see too that the Android designers have taken feedback from elsewhere. For instance, there is now a design pattern for the drawer pattern.
Absolutely.
Where there wasn't before. The nice thing is once it's codified as a design standard, basically they didn't create the drawer pattern, but they did look at the way everybody had implemented it and tried to pick the particular type of implementation that fit the best with the platform and with user friendliness and usability in general. And so now there's a pattern, and it's not the way that, for instance, the original Google Plus app did it.
No.
It's closer to the way the original YouTube app did it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close to the way YouTube shows.
Google Plus app is now updated, actually. And yeah, it's actually a little more usable. So that sort of thing is actually extremely valuable to us when we hear that there's a particular UI pattern that's either absent or getting in the way of making your app great. Now, obviously, if you're the type of designer, and I know that this exists, if your boss is carrying some other type of phone and they come in, they say, we hate your design because it doesn't look right, and you say, no, it's a perfect Android design, and they're like, well, it doesn't look like my smartphone. We know that can be tough.
Yeah.
But in general, if you're trying to make an Android design and it doesn't work for whatever reason, we want to hear about it because we want to fix as many of those as we can. And anyone who's willing to work with us on a continual basis and implement our suggestions and make our design better is very likely to get some help from us.
Absolutely. I think that's an important part of what we're trying to offer here, and really the justification for why we've sort of rebooted our App Clinic series today is because we want to make it clear that the apps that we do talk about, we're not just putting you up there like a piñata to take hits and then move on. We really want to hear back from you. We want to know, what are you doing, what worked, what didn't work, what was harder than it should have been. We'd be really interested to know if we say, oh, we think you should just change this button over here slightly, and you're like, yeah, man, that took like 2 days of work, and we had to hire a designer for half a day. We need to know. That's the sort of thing which we can really do actions on. So it needs to be a two-way street here. This is an opportunity that I think some of you guys will find quite useful, and certainly I would have back in the days when I was writing code every day instead of doing developer relations, is hearing that advice, but being able to really speak to the people who are providing it and get that input as to how can I do this, and these are the struggles that I've had. And so this is us putting ourselves out there and giving you guys the opportunity to have that back and forth. Let us know what's working, what's not working, and ask us questions. And that's really, when we're talking about taking technical deep dives, that's what we want to spend the time on these shows doing, is showing you exactly how to implement difficult things and creating as much content around that as we can.
And in general, what we're going to try and do is keep the show to half an hour, but have some question time afterwards. So we'll still schedule an hour from our day. Now, we may actually pre-record some of the segments of the show.
Only those which don't affect the outcome.
Exactly. But we will always be here live for questions at the appointed time. Just go ahead and type them into YouTube, or type them into G+. Looks like YouTube's probably the preferred scenario right now because that's what Dan's got up on the screen.
But we're going to try and do a lot better as well when it comes to responding to this stuff in real time.
Oh, there you go. Dan's got that one.
He's got it all
awesome.
up. He's got it under control.
He is on top of things. Well, let us know. So Dan, is there anything else that stands out as a question?
Yeah, one of our usual viewers, Funnergoat, wants to know where the Pure Android collection is going to be posted to.
So we'll have more details on exactly where you can find all of this stuff once we've got a few apps to put in there. So we're gonna take a quick look back across some of the apps that we've reviewed. I don't know what happened to my tongue there. Over the last few weeks, I know Camera Zoom Effects have just released an exciting new update which does a lot of the things which the Android Design and Action team suggested. So we're going to probably this week spend a bit of time and check out if any of the apps which we reviewed are ready to become part of the collection. And as soon as we have a couple of guys in there, then we'll tell you guys all about where you can find it, and we'll definitely be making a big deal of it then. So right now, it's a call for nominations, basically. So if you've had your app reviewed by us, and you've already made awesome updates, please let us know so we can check it out. And then anyone who we review in the future, same thing. As soon as you're ready for us to take a look and give it the App Clinic stamp of approval, we'll go through that process and we'll let you all know.
In general, the way collections work is we can link to them from our website at any time, and they have the ability to be featured on Google Play, but they're almost never featured for a very long time. So we can't guarantee that the collection will appear on the Google Play Store at any particular time because that's a merchandising team decision, but we can tell you that it will always be available for you developers to take a look at.
Exactly. So we'll be pointing at it, and there'll always be a link that you can point at too. And I should point out as well, the thing about these